obviously to the
Go live on YouTube now, and I'll let you know when we're fully live.
waiting to get started.
Hey, Chair, we are live on YouTube if you'd like to start the meeting.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the meeting of the Berkshire Pension Board. This is the last meeting of this municipal year, today, Monday, the 18th of March, 2024. My name's Alan Cross. I'm a member representing the board, and I'm chair of the board and will be chairing this meeting. There's a couple of fresh faces around the room. I'll read the full script today. The meeting is held virtually via Zoom and streamed to the public on YouTube. I remind everyone that participation in the meeting indicates consent to audio and video being streamed live and acknowledgement that the meeting and it will continue to be available in the public domain. It would be useful if all members and officers could introduce themselves so anyone watching is aware of who's in the meeting, and indeed those in the room meet those who aren't in the room who've not met before. I request that meeting participants do not speak unless I specifically ask you to do so. Once I'm invited to speak, before you do so, please state your name, or that's probably not necessary today. Once we've had the initial introductions, obviously I'll ask officers to speak at appropriate times. Should there be any disruption in the meeting, I have the ability to ask for somebody to be removed. We'll now sort of do the introductions. So we'll go this way around. So I've already introduced myself, Phil.
Good morning, everybody. Philip Boyton, Deputy Head of Pension Fund for Berkshire.
Good morning, everybody. Ian Coleman. I'm the Interim Pension Fund Manager for 3 months in between Damien leaving and Joe starting.
Good morning, everybody. My name's Jo Thistlewood. I will be your new Head of Pension Funds from the 22nd of April. I'm here just observing board and committee meetings today, just to get a feel for what goes on. Thank you very much.
But in the circumstances, if there's something you do wish to say, feel free to say.
Thank you very much.
say because it's, you know, it's daft not to. We'll go how people are organised on my screen. So Jeff.
Yes, so Jeff Ford. I'm a member representative, retired.
Arthur
Parker. I'm here as an employer representative.
Nikki
Craig, and I'm also an employer representative.
And Mikey is the clerk for the meeting today.
Yes, Mikey Lloyd, Democratic Services Officer, and as Alan said, clerking today's meeting.
Okie doke. I think that we move on to the declaration of interest. It's unusual for the declaration of interest, but does anybody have an interest to declare at this meeting? Thank you. Obviously, if something comes up, say so at the time. We have the minutes of the 18th of December meeting. There were a couple of minor typos that I pointed out to Mike, and will get back to before I sign them. But I think those were in the email to everybody.
Correct, Chair, and we've just had Julian join us as well.
Oh, okay. Well, let's let Julian in, and before we get much further, just step back to the item. We'll just pause while Julian. Good morning. Would you like to unmute and just introduce yourself?
Morning, I'm Julian Curzon and I work for Haybrook College and I am an employer representative.
I presume you're in an office where you can't sort of come visibly on screen, but that's fine.
Sorry, I was on it, sorry.
It's just your name at the moment, but don't worry about it.
No, Oh, you should see me.
Is your shutter closed, Julian, on your laptop?
Nope. I tested it all beforehand. It'll come up in a minute.
Okay. Do you want to mute and let's just see what happens and we'll get on with the meeting? Okie doke. So we were just as Julian joined going through the minutes. Apart from two typos being sorted, I'm assuming there's no other comments, so I can sign those later. Is everyone content?
Yes, can I just ask a question?
Yeah, of course you can, go.
From the minutes, have the authorities' accounts yet been signed off for 2021?
No.
No, I think it's the answer to that is the indications I'm getting in the room, and Nikki's also shaking her head.
Okay, thank you.
And sort of as a matter of writing, the scheme advisory board was due to publish something on Islamic finance. Did that actually get published?
Yes, we'll have an update on it. Yeah.
Good. And I presume that the government did confirm the benefits rise from April.
Yes.
Thank you. Those are the two things I noted in the minutes that might be attended. Right, we'll then crack on with the business. First of all, being the board governance matters. We continue to have a vacancy for a member representative, and we've just refreshed the deadline on that to the end of April, and clearly I'm going to have to try and do something active to encourage somebody to express an interest in that sort of thing. So that one's probably with me, and if we haven't progressed it by the time Joe arrives, me and Joe to sort of do something about it, because I have been talking just before the meeting with Ian, and sort of we aren't unique in having problems recruiting member representatives, but clearly we ought to try, and I think there's some concern that may be of interest to the regulator in time if these posts sit vacant for a long time. But we'll see how the world develops. So anyway, thank you for everybody remaining part of the board. Governance scheme and regulatory update. Bill, you're leading this.
Yep. Thank you, Chair. Yes, so the Sharia law report to start with. So as informed during earlier pension board meetings, the Scheme Advisory Board in England and Wales sought opinion about the Sharia compliance of pension benefits for Muslim members of the LGPS. The opinion sought was from a gentleman, Mufti Faraz Adam. He's a UK-based expert in Islamic finance and fintech, and leads the advisory firm in respect of Sharia law. Mufti's role, to provide some background about the gentleman, includes in advising multiple Islamic financial institutions across the world with clients in the UK, US, Canada, Malaysia, Singapore, among others. The Sharia law report was published during November last year, and to summarise in two parts. Firstly, the opinion. So at a macro level, the pension benefits provided by the LGPS are acceptable to receive from a Sharia perspective. This is based on the fact that scheme members do not own the underlying investment in the funds and are simply being paid what they are owed by their employer as deferred salary. The contractual relationship between the employer and employee is that of an ijara agreement, whereby the employee provides services in exchange for wages, some of which are deferred, the deferred element invested by the employers in the LGPS and managed by the administering authority. The employee does not directly own or invest the monies, rather the employer undertakes the investment via the admin authority, and it is the employer that bears the risks. Hence, pension benefits can be accepted by retired Muslim members as they do not have direct involvement with the investment arm. At a fund level, the LGPS is not Sharia compliant. There are several non-Sharia compliant assets. Based on the analysis conducted, the LGPS invests significantly in non-Sharia compliant assets such as conventional bonds, cash holdings, earning interest, and other instruments like commodity futures contracts. At a macro level, the current approach of funding pension obligations through investments that conflict with the ethical values is inconsistent with Sharia principles and the broader economic vision it promotes. The investment strategy does not reflect Sharia's objectives of fostering overall economic welfare that benefits all community members, regardless of their religious beliefs. While Muslim members may technically receive pension benefits in the short term without breaching Sharia compliance, the long-term investment strategy of contributions diverges from the values of the Muslim community. This highlights the need for a more aligned investment approach that respects the ethical guidelines of all Muslim community members. The second part provided in the report was the recommendation, which confirms the LGPS is encouraged to embrace a holistic investment strategy that considers different investment strategies that represent Muslim members' values and interests. By expanding to include, for example, specialized sub-funds like Sharia compliant ESG, SRI, or socially responsible investment, or impact investments, which are investments made with the intention to generate positive, measurable social and environmental benefits alongside a financial return. The LGPS not only enhances its inclusive appeal, but also ensures it caters to the unique values and beliefs of various members. Another recommendation is that the LGPS is encouraged to develop a Sharia-compliant fund or segregated asset allocation. A suggested portfolio allocation was made of 6.5% of the total LGPS fund, aligning with Muslim population in the UK. This would address the reservation many Muslim employees are likely to have regarding current pension fund investments. Also recommended is the LGPS pension funds would need to establish a Sharia board to provide oversight and regular audit reviews. This would assure Muslim employees that their deferred wages are being administered and invested in a manner compliant with Islamic principles. The report concludes that currently Muslim members may continue being members of the LGPS and retired Muslim members may continue to receive pension benefits. Is there any questions on that update at all?
Is the scheme advisory board minded to produce any guidance in light of the wider parts of that advice? I mean, the basic position for Muslim members is sort of okay, but they're in this difficult position. They're participating in something that their scholars are saying isn't quite in line with their values, sort of thing, and that sort of you know, I can see where the gentleman is coming from, sort of thing, and you know, and clearly we need to know whether you know SAB is thinking of doing anything about that part of the advice.
Well, there hasn't been any that I've seen any further steps around the advice at the moment. It's only the report that's been made available. The conclusion is that in summing up there, that they suggest it is fine for Muslim members to reap the rewards of the excellent benefits the scheme provides. Is more around the investments arm of it's invested in the portfolio.
Yes, I understand where the argument's coming from. In a sense, some people may feel that their pension is tainted because of the way the money is generated to pay them is not compliant with their values, and that's sort of why I can an advisory board may say that pension funds ought to look at this, but it may choose not to, sort of thing. Given it's a relatively small minority, but that's a national average. It's larger in some areas. It's probably a little bit larger in this area as a whole. If I remember the stats for you know the Slough and Reading populations and how those translate when you put it up across Berkshire.
Yeah. I think it'd be wrong for there not to be more to follow on the outcome of the report, which we'll come to with as and when that is known.
Julian raised a point in the chat about what other LGPS funds are doing. If I may, Chair, just to say, I think, as Philip has rightly said, there's got to be more guidance coming down from the Scheme Advisory Board, and it will be very difficult for individual funds to do something separately because we're 86 different funds and 86 different separate investment strategies will have to be driven to an extent by a national guidance.
Well, I'm content with that. I mean, I guess that the question is, are funds pushing for guidance, or is the Scheme Advisory Board indicating it's going to do some, or what, what's the next step on this? And well, I think it's probably just watch this space. I think the current guidance is it's probably there isn't anything formally.
No.
Is that okay, Julian?
Yes, it is. No, I was just, obviously here in Slough we have a very high Muslim population, which possibly is disrepresentative of some of the other LGPS schemes, apart from maybe some in Yorkshire and places like that.
Well, as I sort of commented, I think the Muslim population of Slough is obviously a lot larger than the national average. I'm pretty sure Reading is somewhat larger than the national average. I suspect most of the other Berkshire authorities are at or below the national average, but that probably means the population of the county area is, if anything, slightly higher. But I wouldn't want to be quoted on that without seeing the stats sort of thing, and whether that sort of leads to any pressure to well, us and or pension funds generally. And I think, as Joe said and others said, we have to wait and see what the board suggests, or if we are asked by any members or employers to look at the issue further. I think our response will be to say, well, this is what the board has advised, and we're going to have to wait until the board does anything further, but we'll let them know we've had the information or we've had the request if anything comes. Can we move on?
Okay. Okay. Next update is around the much anticipated new Pensions Regulator General Code. So the new General Code was laid before Parliament on the 10th of January this year, nearly 3 years after the original consultation was published on the 17th of March 2021. So the new code due to come into effect on the 27th of March. Although the new code is 171 pages long, it is significantly shorter than the 10 codes it replaces. The General Code includes content which is both updated and new. Comprising of 5 parts, which are in turn broken down into 51 modules. The 5 areas are the governing body, funding and investment, administration, communications and disclosure, and reporting to the pensions regulator. While clarity is required on the exact applicability of the new General Code to the LGPS, it can be said those modules which subject content are covered in the outgoing code number 14 will clearly continue to remain significant requirements. These include, for example, knowledge and understanding, conflicts of interest, publishing scheme information, internal controls, record keeping, data monitoring and improvement, and dispute resolution procedures. 2 issues of particular note, which are certainly additional requirements on LGPS funds, are modules on cybersecurity and scams. The pensions regulator has indicated that it does not expect LGPS funds to be able to demonstrate full compliance with all of the provisions of the new code from the 27th of March, But what is expected is that funds will have an awareness of their potential gaps in compliance, and ideally setting out a plan how and when these gaps will be filled. As explained, the exact applicability of the new general code to the LGPS is not absolutely clear. The Scheme Advisory Board, however, has stated, and I quote, they will support funds in understanding any new requirements in the code, and where needed, will produce new or updated existing guidance to assist funds with their responsibilities. Therefore, Berkshire's officers will pay particular attention to the guidance issued by the Scheme Advisory Board. I think it's worth saying that the Berkshire Fund already has an exceptionally good level of compliance with TPR's governance and administration needs set out in the outgoing code number 14. However, rather than wait for the Scheme Advisory Board, an exercise is underway to consider to what degree the fund complies with the new elements, including those not limited to the applicability of the LGPS, but including those deemed perhaps to be best practice overall. Updates including a plan for achieving full compliance with relevant elements of the code of practice will be shared with future board meetings. Any questions at that point?
And I suppose the plan will be to look at that and bring a report to a future meeting. I think if I understand the dial, we're next due to meet in July.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah,
So-
so I mean, whether that will be too soon, we can have a.
Would you like me to mention the compliance checker?
Yeah, we can do.
So through the various advisors, Aon and Barnett Waddingham and Hymas Robertson have run webinars on the new TPR General Code. And I think all of them are in the process of developing a compliance checker system, effectively a checklist that sets out all of the modules and all of the key requirements, and allows funds to input their evidence linked to their own controls and things in place, but also identify areas of non-compliance. And the checkers will effectively form like a report to boards and committees that show areas of non-compliance and support drawing down actions from those non-compliant areas to form an action plan. I think in most instances those checklists cost around £5,000 to procure. It can be done as a one-off procurement, but form a really good tool for assessing compliance and evidencing actions that are required. So one of my suggestions would be that we look to purchase one of those checkers and carry that out as part of a initial assessment of compliance, and then use the reports to demonstrate the action plan to the pension regulator that we're working towards that compliance.
Sure. So it seems like a sensible way forward, and obviously we'll decide whether that can be done by July or September outside the meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Just one more area from me, and one that the chair has already touched on, around pensions increase. So about background, Pensions Increase Act 1971 legislation governs the public service annual pensions, deferred and in payment, are increased every year. So LGPS annual pensions will therefore be increased from the 8th of April this year by 6.7%. That is in line with the annual increase in the Consumer Prices Index up to September 23, except for those annual pensions which have been deferred or in payment for less than 1 year. Those will receive a pro rata increase. Separately to that, in the career average revalued earnings care public sector pension schemes introduced in 2014 and 2015, annual pensions in accrual will be which are revalued annually in relation to either prices or earnings, depending on the terms specified in the regulations. Care pensions in the LGPS will be increased on the 6th of April this year rather than the traditional 1st of April. But the 6th of April will be revalued by 6.7%. There was a change to the revaluation date, just to digress, in regards to the annual allowance and to, in some respects, negate the larger pensions increase awarded of 10.1% in April 23. Linked to pensions increase is the additional pension limit. So regulations 16.6 and 31.2 state that individuals are able to purchase additional annual pensions by way of additional monthly contributions or one-off a lump sum. The additional pension limit increases on the 1st of April each year. The increase due on the 1st of April this year is the pensions increase that applied on the 10th of April 23. The reason being the 2024 increase does not take effect until the 8th of April. Therefore, the additional pension limit of 7,579 that applied for 23-24 is increased by 10.1% and will be £8,344. And that's it from me, unless there's any questions on that.
That's all standard stuff, and it got changed a year or two back to be aligned with the tax year, as I recall.
2016, yes, yeah. For the annual allowance.
Okay, thanks, Bill. Shall we now move on to risk management? Yeah, and you're paid to do.
Certainly, Chair. Thank you. You have before you the quarterly update to the risk management, the risk register, in line with best practice, what's considered best practice. This is updated on an ongoing basis and reported to every meeting of the board and to the pension fund committee. There remain 46 risks on the risk register. The only one that is assessed as red relates to the implementation of the McLeod remedy, and that's not because we don't think we will implement it. It's simply because at this stage there remains uncertainty as to the volume of work which will be necessary to implement the remedy, and as to whether, in that case, whether we have sufficient staff in order to deliver the remedy. So until it's clear what the volume of work is, it remains as a red risk. I'm confident that when we do know exactly what the volume will be, then we will deliver the remedy in the set timelines. So that's the only specific risk I wanted to draw attention to. Are there any questions?
I'll just comment in. I think you come to me in your interim role, you've basically got to keep things safely moving. So unlike Damien, who's been reviewing about half a dozen risks or more in recent meetings, this is essentially the same register we saw last time.
That's correct,
and that reflects, there's nothing super significant that's happened to change anything.
Correct.
So obviously the three risks we got rid of last time we didn't need today, but the last three can be ignored. But I think that's probably sensible, and Jo, when she sort of starts in a month or so's time, will no doubt want to give this a good review, and as she familiarises herself with what's going on for review, whether these fairly state where our risks are at the moment or not, and we'll have another update next time is my sense of it. Does anybody else have any questions or comments?
If I may add, and because Ian has highlighted it as a red risk, there is a documented project plan in respect of the McLeod remedy that does have its own dedicated risk register. We continue to work well with our actuary and also our pension software provider to ensure that we are able to more easily identify those members eligible under the McLeod remedy provisions, but then also calculate what underpin protection, if any, those eligible members identified have. So it is a work that is in progress with regular updates with the actuary and our software provider.
And is going as well as, better than, not quite as well as expected at the moment?
In terms of the work that the actuary has been asked to undertake and what the input the software provider needs to have, everything that has been questioned is a yes and can be provided.
Yeah.
So we haven't hit any hurdles around.
So we're basically proceeding
As-
in line with that
as
plan.
planned, yes.
So in that case, that bit at least sits in a very
Yes.
green place in,
Yeah.
in my mind, sort of thing. It's when it, you know, for whatever reason things go off plan, you have to sort of say what's sort of gone on, and
Yeah.
that's good to hear, because you know, it's sort of a, well, I imagine virtually every fund has got this on high alert
Yes.
at the moment because of
Yeah.
the nature of the beast, basically. Okay, we're happy to move on to statute.
So
Yes,
sorry,
yeah.
can I just manage expectations a little bit on this risk register for
Yeah,
me? I'm
yeah.
not planning to do I won't have a detailed update
Yeah,
of the risk register by your next meeting, but I hope to at least have an understanding of what the risk register is. So
yeah. that's
please
fine.
don't expect a fully detailed review of the risk
No,
register
that's-
by July.
Can I add to that? This risk register, having seen risk registers at a number of other pension funds, this is a good risk register and in a good state
Yeah.
of updating. So I wouldn't imagine that it will be Joe's number one priority
No.
in taking up the post.
I think that's probably fair, and you know, we know that Damien has done a lot of work on this over recent years, and
Yeah.
you know, both moving it into this format and, you know, subsequently tweaking things around since we started, and you know, I'm not suggesting that, you know, we should be
Yeah.
updating it for the sake of doing so. You know, take it at a sensible rate that you can do coming in, sort of thing. And you know, we appreciate you need to see what is really going on before you necessarily want to change things, and might take a little longer than April to when the papers need to go up in July.
Sorry, Chair, I didn't want to just butt in there, but the next meeting I believe is in June, not July. Just to make people aware on that
Okay,
one. Did obviously don't want to give people the expectation they'd have an extra month when they potentially don't. Yeah, the next meeting is scheduled for June.
Okay, it's obviously different to the date that's marked in my diary, but we'll pick that up outside the meeting.
17.
17.
Yeah.
Okay. Right, does that get us on to statutory policies?
It does.
And Ian, you're introducing.
Thank you, Chair. We've only updated one statutory policy in the last quarter, which is the revision to the governance compliance statement. A statutory report required to be produced. This is revised governance compliance statement. If members have compared it with the previous one, they'll notice there's very little change, and that's because there was very little that needed to be changed. I assume members have read it and are happy to take any questions.
Does anybody have any points? Nikki?
Sorry, I'm struggling to find the hand up just for a second there. Again, there was very little change, wasn't there? I was just going through the training logs at the back, and the point that Philip was making earlier and Joe was making earlier about the code of conduct and the conduct being updated and the stuff that we'd get from TPR on training. We've already got some of those TPR modules for pension scams at the moment. Is that where the cyber stuff might come into it? Joe, you were talking about, you know, probably purchasing the checker potentially. So as an output of that, if it was a training and such, that's the type of thing that would be added into the end of this statement, I'm presuming.
Yeah, through you, Chair. Nick Gannon from the pensions regulator at all of the webinars that I've seen has said that at some point the TPR's public sector online toolkit will be updated for the requirements of the code, but that's not their number one priority at the moment, so that will follow in due course.
Perfect, thank you.
Just to add to what Joe said, the TPR is saying that they'll be updating the training code for the private sector first, and then following with the public sector. So I wouldn't expect that we would see anything till at least next year.
Yeah, okay, and probably a hint of what we might see then, and what the private sector gets as well. Obviously, I have got some things to catch up on, and two members of the committee got some things to catch up on, in terms of where we are at the moment. And that's sort of something we probably need to catch up on sooner rather than later, given the regulatory background.
We'll look for that.
Yeah.
I may as well, just for board member peace of mind, we'll see there that in Annex 1 training records. So we did have a turnover of committee and advisory panel members following the May local elections. There is an endeavouring to ensure that those new committee and advisory panel members do fulfil their training. So regular reminders are being sent. So hopefully be able to populate that more green in the coming weeks.
Thank you. And the only sort of scribble I put on my reading notes is some of the history could probably be dropped next time we update this, but it's not problematic in terms of saying this is okay. So formally the committee will be reapproving this tonight, all being well. Somebody say yes.
Yeah.
So yes,
I did say all being well. Okay.
no indication at the briefings that they wouldn't be.
Yes.
That way.
Right.
And that in itself may be a flag around those attending that
Yeah.
haven't fulfilled
Yeah.
their training. Yeah.
Well, if
It's always a good. That's fine.
yeah, well, I'm happy, given I'm also at fault to sort of draw people's attention to it, if it doesn't crop up otherwise. Good governance.
Yes, Chair. This report covers the annual business plan, the budget for forthcoming year 24-25, and the medium-term plan over the next 4 years. So plenty of detail in the supporting appendix. Again, I will assume that members have had the opportunity to read through this, and happy to take questions on any aspect of it. Perhaps the most interesting part is the budget. Any questions?
Any questions for anyone on the screen? Maybe sort of indicating they want to. We'll come to the budget in a minute. My thought is one or two of them where it sort of said percentage of standards achieved. It would be useful when we have this report to say what percentage we had, rather than just achieve sort of thing like, were we at 95 or were we at 99 or 100% of standard. There's a few of those that applies to the budget. My only observation was that it struck me there was some quite big variances in 23-4, and is that sort of just the normal course of life, or is that actually we didn't think about this well enough 12-15 months ago whenever we were doing it to get such large variances? I'm conscious for French fund we get big numbers sort of thing.
Chair, I think the main issue is that mostly in putting together a budget for the pension fund, much of the information is unknown. It's dependent on decisions made by the employers, which Windsor and Maidenhead can't possibly know at the stage of putting the budget together. So there's always significant variances in the pension fund budget.
Yeah. And is the staff cost being under and the administration cost being over merely because for some reason interim costs will end up in administration costs and staff costs will end up in staff costs, or is there some of that?
My understanding of the approach that has been taken in putting the budget table together is that in terms of the staff remuneration, if that's what you're referring to.
Yeah.
The top end of each grade has been considered on this occasion rather than the actual spend.
You mean it was budgeted at the top end?
Yes.
Rather than the
Actual
last person's act, which would be, because as a percentage of the budget, the variance is quite large.
The top end of each grade for each post has been used on this occasion.
Yeah. Oh, okay. That's
rather than current salary plus 3%, which the council is awarding next month.
Jeff's now indicating.
Yeah, I was going to talk about the staff costs and the admin costs. Obviously the admin costs seem to be quite a relatively variance, and also the staff costs seem to be like the opposite way round. It more or less comes out in the wash, if that makes sort of sense. But is there an explanation as to why that is? I mean, the budget for 23-24 for admin costs was 1.033, where the forecast is going to be 1.302. So that's relatively a high difference.
I think unless anyone in the room knows a reason for that, I suggest we pick that up as a.
Well, one of the drivers for that, I know for sure, is the additional costs associated with the software.
Okay.
So there have been sort of developments within the scheme that have led to ad hoc development costs. Now, these costs are not, or these costs are spread across the pool of clients that Hayward use. So they are shared costs across what's called a class group. So we've had McLeod developments, we have pension dashboard developments already going into the system, and that they are a sizable overall cost.
Right.
So that is one of the drivers.
And presumably part of the reason for budgeting, you know, somewhat more than the forecast for by.
There will be known costs, or there are known costs already, and Haywards are charging those sort of, over a period.
And sorry, the other question was the staff costs was we seem to be well below our.
Silent. Hang on, Jeff. You'll need to say that again. One. Jeff, can you say something?
Yeah, sure. What I was going to say. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, great. So what I was talking about was the staff costs. I mean, we're well under. Is that because we've been short of staff, or is that Damien leaving us? We're leaving us such a large surplus.
So yes, it's true to say that there have been a number of posts vacant within the structure, and I'm pleased to say that there is an ongoing recruitment process in respect of senior pension administrators and pension administrators. So we're getting to a stage now, very soon, all bar one post, there will be a bum on every seat, so to speak. But yes, resource wise, bodies wise, to be blunt, we have been understaffed.
Is your how much is your turnover of staff in a year? Is that a hard question to answer? 5%, 10%?
I would say in the last 12 months, it has been unusual. There have been a number of senior posts just leaving us through natural retirement, or choosing to move on, or haven't worked out for whatever reasons. But I would say in a 12-month period, there is on average one that departs.
I think the turnover is relatively low, but this last year obviously has been more significant. This time last year, I think Kevin was still with us. And whilst Damien finished at the end of February, his last day of formal employment was well into March, so he won't have significantly contributed to that underspent sort of thing. But there have been other gaps as Phil has mentioned, and I suspect the main issue maybe what you mentioned earlier, that if we for reasons sensible in the long term tend to budget at the top of the grade, but not everyone's paid at the top of the grade, that will naturally produce a level of underspend.
Okay, fair enough. Okay, gives you a bit of wiggle room.
Time to do that.
Yeah.
I'll
Okay,
get
thanks.
Barrel to him then go. Okay.
Hi.
Something for us, because if not, can we mute?
Yes, sorry, yes. Hi, can I ask a question, please?
Yes.
The difference between the 23-24 budget and the 23-24 forecast is quite substantial. and therefore will that make a big difference on the performance of the fund?
Ian is saying below his breath, no. And I was about to say no, because but perhaps he should do the because rather than me.
Well, these costs, as shown in the budget here, are a very small element of the total turnover of the pension fund.
Yeah.
So even a significant variation would have virtually no impact on the net position of the fund.
No, I was talking about the actual increase in the net assets. So the net assets have gone up by about 190,000 or something like that.
Which,
unless I'm looking at the wrong table.
The very bottom line, which is
The very bottom line, yes. The difference between, there was a budget.
But the liabilities have also gone up, as we will see on later papers.
Okay.
And in fact, the deficit therefore increases during the course of the year because of that.
Okay.
But the
I will hold my question.
Yeah, generally the larger variations in that budget table are associated with employers moving, looks like, into the fund, or more people being taken on. So employer contributions have ended up being higher, or but in some cases, people have transferred out of the fund, sort of thing. So, yeah, that's going to be the issue, and they are hard to forecast at the beginning of the year. I think is sort of why those variations will tend to be quite significant. Okay,
thank you.
I think we're happy with that to go on to committee tonight, and so administration report.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, so turning to page 53 of 206 of your pack.
It might be 55 in some of them.
It is, yeah. So agenda item 9. So standing item, this time for the period 1st of October to the 31st of December. More than one recommendation on this occasion, so to not only note the areas, but also to note the increase in the key performance indicator for deceased processing from 5 to 10 working days, with effect from the reporting period 1st of January. The reason for this is in acknowledgement of the discussions that we as a board have had, but also the committee have had. So that has been acted on if the recommendation and content of the report is approved. So I'll take the report as read, if I may, turning to point 1.4, scheme employer key performance indicators. So an update in respect of iConnect. You will see from the table that there has been a downturn in a couple of employer types. The first being Reading Borough Council. Not hitting on this occasion the heady heights of 100%, but sadly they submitted 1 of 3 returns late. They were 10 days overall outside of the KPI to make their submission. The reason being was the individual responsible for submitting the file was on leave, and there was no resilience in place. The other is one we talked about, and there had been improvement, academies and schools. One particular payroll provider on this occasion, EduPay, who submitted all of their contracts, academy and schools, late, sadly. I'm pleased to say that we are having, given the time of the year and year end fast approaching, 31st of March, we have had a lot of engagement from our remaining trusts wanting to onboard and streamline this last year end process. Sadly, there is a queue, so not all will be able to be onboarded, but we continue that open line of communication with them. so that they can start afresh in the new scheme year. Testing is ongoing with those employers that will move to a live state as soon as possible. Moving on to 1.5 key performance indicators. So just to point out there, chart 5B, the deceased processed within 5 working days. The only one of 4 KPIs with a significant fluctuation, but having taken on board your comments, as I say, we have moved the KPI to 10 working days, so 100% increase. But worth pointing out that is still well within the SIPFA benchmark of 2 months. McLeod, I think we've touched on. So happy really to take any questions.
Questions, comments?
Seems fine to me. Well done.
Thank you, Jeff.
Yeah. Yes, I think your comment has sort of indicated that now most academies are in groups.
Yeah.
And the Reading case also illustrates you only need one employer with a lot of people to relate to move that submission percentage down quite a bit. Sort of.
Yeah.
I think as things were looking very good last time compared to where they have been, and it sort of seems to be keep people. I mean, I think the interesting thing is to see where we're performing in the revision of 10 working days. Because I know, having something realistic or more realistic to actually achieve is sort of being part of this. I know the other issue which we talked about last time was some of your newer staff were less experienced at that, and that was the reason for some of the not meeting 5 sort of thing. Presumably, we'd expect the 10 working day stats to be a lot better.
Yes.
And we probably ought to better label the charts in section 1.5, because there's a thing called total of the numbers of cases in each case.
Yeah, so the total aligning each chart is the number of that case type in the given month. Yes.
Which in some, notably that deceased processing is quite a small volume. Which it's nevertheless it's important because I think we established these are the deceased processing where there's a survivor, so there's an ongoing benefit to pay to somebody.
Yes, so this is deceased processing where there is a surviving partner's pension payable. The KPI is measured from receiving all of the forms and verifications required to be able to put the surviving partner's pension into payment.
Right,
so it's a time from receipt to putting into payment. Yeah.
Right. Yes. It's a bit comparable to 5D for a survivor in that sense.
Yes.
Want to say anything, or shall we move on to responsible investments? No indication, so we'll move on to responsible investment. Ian's leading us on this one.
Thank you, Chair. This report, I'll read through basically this report, or start with it. It presents the RI report and the dashboard is aligned with the fund's RI policy, and carries material and provides a suite of key engagement activities undertaken on behalf of the fund. The outcome of these engagements. Whilst I've read the reports, they were produced by LPPI, as members will be aware. I've read through them, but I wouldn't claim to be able to answer many detailed questions on them. But I'm happy to have a go. We may need to defer until LPPI are with us later today, but for some answers. But if anybody has any questions, we'll have a go. We'll have a go.
Nobody's indicating on screen. I'm sort of conscious that LPPI need to do deal with these just in the report. I think there are some good news stories here that we probably need to find some ways of publicising. Sort of thing was my sort of sense. There was some progress on, you know, the comments on climate voting, for example, on page 81 that you know, by making, I mean, basically that's a message companies have been making improvements so that you know, haven't been either votes against management or needs for so much need for engagement, which is good. The reasonably good news in terms of LPPI's performance in section 7, and then moving on to the BCO report. I think it's yes, part 2. There's more good news. So certainly on the dashboard, you know, clearly since the beginning of 2022, the LPPI Global Fund has been in a good place, so compared to benchmark, and generally throughout the past 4 years have been in a good place compared to benchmark.
The one area I think is showing significant improvement, and of course it depends on the definitions that LPPI are using, is the difference between investments in that brown sectors and green sectors, where the proportion is significantly increasing in favour of green. But as I say, it does depend on how they define those.
Well, and some of that will be down to LPPI's decision at the beginning of 2022 to remove extractive things, you know, extractive oil from the global equity portfolio. As you say, there are points to take up with LPPI later when they're with us for the committee, but you know, some of the messaging here we need to find ways of communicating to membership and the employers through newsletters and whatever like that would be my.
I think that's a real challenge. Is pulling from all the RI work that LPPI do. What are the key messages to get across to the members of the club?
Certainly from an employer communication, the quarterly newsletter that we send out, there has been an RI dedicated item in there each time.
It's good.
And so yes, it is a part once. It's the chart that's on page 111 of the table. If I was reading that right, the net zero target, the net zero target, the market generally started in a place getting on for double the level at the LPPI portfolio, and it's gradually coming down a trajectory to halve it. The LPPI portfolio seems to have got down to a third of what it started at, which was already half where if I'm reading that right. So that struck me that there's a very good and very strong message to say the carbon intensity of how the Berkshire fund is invested is significantly below the market and has significantly dropped over the past couple of years, unless I'm reading that badly wrong.
No, I think you're not reading it wrong. I think generally this is all moving in the right direction. I think it's it won't move quickly enough for some people and some interest groups, but it is moving in the right direction.
But its percentage of where the market typically is a lot lower, and that's certainly good news. It's certainly good news for the planet. No, if nobody else is indicating, do we have any other business to deal with today?
Not from me, Chair.
Okay, and then move to item 12, which is the exclusion of the public, and to consider passing the resolution that's under section 100A4 of the Local Context Institute. The public be excluded from the remainder of this meeting while discussion takes place on grounds that may involve lack of disclosure of exempt information as defined in the Act. And that's written more fully there. Are we happy to move to part two? Thank you, and we'll log off this and join the part two meeting in a few moments' time. Thank you.